The Velthari had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. They were tall creatures with pale gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were black, like the void between stars. They had conquered 17 star systems and enslaved dozens of species. No one had ever said no to them. No one had ever fought back and won. When their scout ships found Earth, they laughed. The beings there were soft and small. They had only visited their own moon a few times. They had primitive rockets and simple computers. The Velthari had weapons that could crack planets in half. This would be easy. Admiral Zethkar sat in his command chair on the great warship Eternal Dominion. He was old even by Velthari standards. He had conquered 11 worlds himself. He looked at the blue planet on his viewing screen and felt nothing but contempt. "Send the standard message," he told his communications officer. "They have 1 rotation of their planet to surrender. If they refuse, we begin the cleansing." The message traveled across space at the speed of light. It reached Earth in 8 minutes. It said, "You are now property of the Velthari Empire. Surrender all weapons. Surrender all leaders. Kneel before your new masters. Resistance means death." The first people to receive the message were the crew of the research vessel, Starboard Hope. They were studying asteroids near Mars when the transmission came through. Captain Daniel Price read it 3 times to make sure he understood. Price was 42 years old. He had been a Marine for 15 years before becoming an astronaut. He had fought in 2 wars on Earth. He had seen terrible things and done terrible things. He was not a man who scared easily. He called his crew together. There were 12 of them, scientists and engineers mostly. They looked at him with fear in their eyes. "We received a message," he said. "Aliens exist. They want us to surrender. I am forwarding this to Earth Command right now. Everyone stay calm. Do your jobs. We will figure this out." On Earth, the message caused chaos. Governments panicked. Stock markets crashed. People ran through the streets screaming. Some prayed. Some hid. Some said it was fake dot, but in a quiet building in Geneva, a woman named Lisa Morton read the message and felt something cold settle in her stomach. She was the head of a small department that nobody talked about. Her job was to plan for threats that seemed impossible. Alien invasion was on her list. She picked up her phone and made calls. Within 6 hours, she was standing before the leaders of every major nation on Earth. They looked tired and scared. She was scared too, but she did not show it. "We have a choice," she said. "We can surrender and hope they treat us well. Or we can fight and probably die. I cannot tell you what to do, but I can tell you what I know about surrender. Those who surrender give up the right to decide their own fate. They become property. Is that what we want for our children?" The debate lasted 2 days. Some leaders wanted to surrender. They said fighting was suicide. The aliens had technology far beyond anything humans could imagine. What chance did they have? Others said death was better than slavery. They pointed to history. Every time humans had surrendered to tyrants, they had suffered. Freedom was worth dying for. While they argued, Admiral Zethkar grew impatient. He was used to quick surrenders. This delay annoyed him. He decided to send a reminder. The lunar mining station Hope's Landing sat in a crater on the dark side of the moon. 847 people lived there. Miners, engineers, their families. Children played in the underground gardens. Workers drilled for rare metals. It was a small community, far from Earth, trying to build a future among the stars. The Velthari warship fired once. A beam of pure energy crossed the distance in seconds. Hope's Landing vanished in a flash of light. There were no survivors. There was barely any debris. The news reached Earth within the hour. The debate stopped. The arguments ended. Every leader in that room looked at the images of the destroyed station. at the list of names of the dead, and something changed in their eyes. Lisa Morton stood up again. This time, her voice was different. It was harder, colder. "They killed our people," she said. "They murdered children to make us afraid. They think we are weak. They think we will break. I say we show them what humans do when someone hurts our family." The vote was unanimous. Lisa Morton stood before the cameras. That would broadcast to every screen on Earth. She knew the Velthari were listening too. She wanted them to hear. To the Velthari Empire, she said, "You have attacked our people without warning. You have killed innocents. You have demanded that we become your slaves. Here is our answer." She paused. Her eyes were hard as stone. "We do not surrender. We do not forget. And we do not forgive. You have started a war. We will finish it. Every human being who can hold a weapon will fight you. Every scientist will work to defeat you. Every child will grow up knowing your name and hating it. You will not break us. You will not enslave us. You will learn why Earth's history is written in blood." She ended the transmission. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Zethkar watched the message with amusement. These creatures were brave, he had to admit. Stupid, but brave. Their threats meant nothing. He had heard such words from a dozen species. Before they knelt and begged for mercy, he gave the order to begin the invasion. He did not understand what he had started. He did not know that humans were different from every other species the Velthari had encountered. He did not know about human history, about the endless wars, the terrible weapons, the stubborn refusal to die quietly. He would learn. They would all learn. On Earth, people stopped panicking. They got angry instead. Factories that made cars started making weapons. Scientists who studied medicine started studying how to kill aliens. Soldiers who had retired came back to service. Old enemies became allies overnight. Captain Daniel Price turned his little research vessel toward Earth. He had work to do. Every human did. The Velthari thought they were conquering a primitive world. They were wrong. They had just poked the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They had woken something that should have been left sleeping, and there would be hell to pay. The Velthari expected the war to last 3 months. They had conquered larger worlds in less time. But 3 months passed, and Earth still fought. 6 months passed, and Earth was fighting harder than ever. A year passed, and the Velthari began to wonder what kind of creatures they were dealing with. The first invasion force landed in Central Asia. 10,000 Velthari, soldiers with advanced weapons and armored vehicles. They expected to sweep across the continent in weeks. Instead, they found themselves fighting for every inch of ground. That the humans used strange tactics. They hid in buildings and shot from windows. They buried explosives in roads. They attacked at night when Velthari eyes worked poorly. They never stopped. When one group of fighters died, another took their place. It was like fighting water. You could push it aside, but it always flowed back. Commander Greg Taylor led the resistance in what used to be Kazakhstan. He was a retired Army officer, 63 years old, with a bad knee and gray hair. He should have been fishing somewhere peaceful. Instead, he was teaching farmers how to make bombs from fertilizer and old pipes. They think they know war, he told his fighters. They have fought species who gave up easily. They have never fought humans. We have been killing each other for thousands of years. War is in our blood. It is time to show them what that means. The Velthari commander in the region sent confused reports back to the fleet. His name was Overseer Kethanel, and he had conquered 6 worlds before this assignment. Nothing had prepared him for humans. They do not surrender even when defeat is certain, he wrote. Yesterday, a single human attacked a supply convoy. He was armed with a primitive projectile weapon. He killed 12 of my soldiers before we brought him down. He was smiling when he died. I have never seen anything like this. Meanwhile, on the other side of the planet, something amazing was happening. In a secret laboratory beneath the Nevada desert, a physicist named Kevin Shaw was about to change everything. Shaw was a small man with messy hair and thick glasses. He had spent 15 years working on faster-than-light travel. Everyone said it was impossible. The math did not work. The energy requirements were too high. But Shaw had kept working, kept trying, kept believing. When the Valkyrie came, the government gave him unlimited funding and 1,000 engineers. They told him to make it work or humanity would die. No pressure. Shaw slept 3 hours a night. He lived on coffee and sandwiches. He covered every wall in his lab with equations. His team thought he was going crazy. Maybe he was. But 6 months after the invasion began, he called a meeting. "I found it," he said. His hands were shaking. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. But he was smiling. "I found the way. We can travel faster than light. We can reach their worlds. We can fight back." Within a year, Earth had its first faster-than-light ship. Within 2 years, they had a fleet. But the war was not just about technology. It was about will. And no one showed more will than Sergeant Amy Flores. Flores was 28 years old. She had grown up in a small town in Texas. She had joined the army because she wanted to help people. She never expected to become a legend. When the Valkyrie occupied the colony of New Santiago, the 5th human settlement on Mars, most people surrendered. The colony had no military forces, just scientists and miners. Resistance seemed pointless. Flores disagreed. She gathered 43 volunteers, people who refused to bow to alien masters. They had no proper weapons, just mining tools and stolen Valkyrie rifles. They had no training for this kind of war. But they had something the Valkyrie did not understand. They were willing to die for their freedom. For 8 months, Flores and her small group fought 10,000 Valkyrie soldiers. They hid in the tunnels beneath the colony. They attacked at night and disappeared before dawn. They destroyed supply ships and assassinated officers. The Valkyrie called them Ghost. Flores lost people every week. Friends she had known for years died in her arms. She watched her group shrink from 43 to 29 to 15 to 8. But she never stopped fighting. She could not stop. To stop was to accept that the people who died had died for nothing. The Valkyrie could not understand her. Overseer Kethanol tried to negotiate. He offered her and her remaining fighters safe passage off the planet if they surrendered. Flores sent back a simple message: "Come and take us." He sent 500 soldiers to do just that. Flores and her 7 remaining fighters held a narrow tunnel for 6 hours. They killed over 100 Valkyrie before running out of ammunition. When the aliens finally broke through, they found Flores standing over the bodies of her friends. Holding a broken rifle like a club, she was still swinging when they shot her down. News of her death spread across Earth in hours. Her last stand became a symbol. Recruitment centers were flooded with volunteers. People who had never held a weapon demanded to be trained. Old veterans came out of retirement. The message was clear. If Amy Flores could fight to the death against impossible odds, so could they. The Valkyrie had killed her body. But they had created something far more dangerous: a martyr, a legend, a reason to keep fighting no matter the cost. Kevin Shaw named the first human warship after her. The Amy Flores launched from Earth orbit exactly 2 years after the invasion began. It was not the most advanced ship ever built, but it worked. It could cross the distance between stars in days instead of centuries. Humanity was no longer trapped on one world. Humanity could reach the Valkyrie. Humanity could hurt them. The sleeping giant was fully awake now, and it was angry. The Galactic Council had existed for 3 million years. It was made up of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They had watched empires rise and fall. They had seen stars born and die. They thought they understood everything. They did not. Understand humans. The council met in a great station at the center of the galaxy. It was larger than most moons, a place of crystal spires and floating platforms where beings of every shape and size came to discuss the fate of civilizations. For 3 million years, the council had kept peace among the elder races. They did not fight wars. They negotiated. They compromised. They found balance. When the Velthari attacked Earth, the council watched with mild interest. Another primitive species being conquered. It happened all the time. Sad, but natural. The strong ruled the weak. This was the way of things. But then something strange happened. The humans fought back. And they kept fighting. And they started winning. High Counselor Vormesh, a being of pure energy who had existed for 500,000 years, called an emergency session. Representatives from 100 species gathered in the great chamber. At the center stood a small platform for the newest arrival. The human ambassador. Margaret Cole walked to that platform alone. She was 67 years old, a grandmother of 5. She had gray hair and wrinkles around her eyes. She looked fragile compared to the massive beings around her. But her eyes were hard, and her back was straight. She had survived the destruction of Chicago. She had watched 3 million people die in a flash of light when the Velthari bombed the city from orbit. Her daughter had been among them. Her 2 oldest grandchildren had been with her. She had nothing left to fear. Fear was for people who still had something to lose. Vormesh spoke first. His voice echoed through the chamber like distant thunder. Human representative. The council has observed your conflict with the Velthari Empire. We are concerned. This war threatens the stability of this sector of the galaxy. We have called you here to discuss terms for peace. Cole nodded politely. I am listening. A Velthari representative stepped forward. He was taller than Cole, with coal black eyes. The terms are simple. Humanity will accept Velthari rule. In exchange, we will stop our attacks. Your species will be allowed to exist as servants of the Empire. This is generous. Cole turned to look at him. She said nothing for a long moment. Then she smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Let me tell you about Chicago, she said. Her voice was calm, almost pleasant. It was a beautiful city. 7 million people lived there. My daughter was a teacher. She taught children how to read. My grandchildren, Emma and little Sam, they were 8 and 5 years old. They were visiting their mother when your ships came. She paused. The chamber was silent. Your weapons killed them in less than a second. They never knew what happened. I hope it was painless. I pray it was quick. But I will never know, will I? Because there was nothing left to bury. Just ash and shadows. The Velthari representative shifted uncomfortably. War has costs. Your species could have avoided this by surrendering. Cole's smile disappeared. You came to our world uninvited. You demanded we become your slaves. When we refused, you murdered millions of innocent people. And now you stand here, in this great hall of peace, and you ask us to surrender? You ask us to accept the beings who killed our children as our masters. She turned to face the council. Her voice grew stronger. You have watched the Velthari conquer and enslave for 10,000 years. You did nothing. Species after species was crushed under their boots, and you watched. You called it natural. You called it the way of things. You let it happen because it did not affect you. Vormesh spoke carefully. The council does not interfere in conflicts between species. This has always been our way. Then why are you interfering now? Cole demanded. Why call us here? Why ask for peace? I will tell you why. Because for the first time in 10,000 years, the Velthri are losing. For the first time, someone is fighting back. And that scares you. Silence fell over the chamber. You are afraid, Cole continued. Not of us. Not yet. You are afraid of what it means. You are afraid that the natural order you believed in is a lie. The strong do not always win. The weak do not always fall. Sometimes, the ones you dismiss as primitive and small and worthless rise up and burn your empires to the ground. A Nethari representative spoke. The Nethari were ancient beings, wise and careful. They had watched civilizations rise and fall for longer than most species had existed. What do you want, human? What would bring peace? Cole turned to face him. Peace? You want to know what would bring peace? The Velthri attacked us. They killed millions of our people. They still occupy our colony on Mars. They bomb our cities from orbit. You ask what would bring peace. She took a breath. Nothing. Nothing will bring peace. Not now. Maybe not ever. We did not start this war, but we will finish it. We will not stop until the Velthri pay for every life they took. We will not stop until they feared the word human the way they taught other species to fear them. We will not stop until the galaxy understands that Earth is not prey. We are predators. We have always been predators. We were just waiting for something worth hunting. She turned and walked toward the exit. At the door, she stopped. Tell the Velthri this. We are coming. Not to negotiate. Not to make peace. We are coming to teach them what humanity does to those who hurt our family. And when we are done, the galaxy will remember. The galaxy will know. You do not touch our children. Ever. She left. The chamber remained silent for a long time. The Nethari representative wrote in his private journal that night, I have witnessed the birth of something terrible and beautiful today. The humans do not fear death. They court it like a lover. Their small ambassador spoke with the voice of a species that has faced extinction before and survived. I fear for the Velthri. I fear for all of us. These humans are not like other species. They carry fire in their souls. And fire, once lit, does not easily die. The council voted to remain neutral, but many representatives sent private messages to their governments. Do not provoke the humans. Do not threaten their worlds. Do not hurt their children. The galaxy had received a warning. Whether they were wise enough to heed, it remained to be seen. 2 years after the war began, humanity stopped defending and started attacking. The first target was a Velthri supply station orbiting a gas giant 300 light-years. From Earth, it was lightly defended, because the Velthri never imagined humans could reach it. They were wrong. Lieutenant Commander Jack Romano led the assault. He was 35 years old, the son of a fisherman from a small town in Maine. He had joined the Navy at 18 and worked his way up through the ranks. Nothing in his training had prepared him for space combat. But humans were good at adapting. They always have been. Romano had 12 ships under his command. They were small and fast, built in secret shipyards on the dark side of the moon. They were not pretty. They were welded together from whatever materials could be found. But they worked. The Velthri station was protected by 60 warships. Romano was outnumbered 5-1. Any sane commander would have retreated. Romano was not feeling particularly sane that day. All ships, he said into his communicator. You know why we are here. You know what they did to our people. Today, we take the fight to them. Today, they learn what it means to anger humanity. No retreat. No surrender. Attack. The battle lasted 14 hours. Romano lost 7 ships. 412 humans died in the cold darkness of space, their vessels torn apart by Velthri weapons. But when the fighting ended, the station was destroyed. and all 60 enemy ships were debris drifting among the stars. Romano sent a single message back to Earth. The station is gone. We are coming home. Start building more ships. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. For the first time since the war began, humans had attacked Veltari territory. For the first time, they had won a major battle away from their home system. People danced in the streets. They cried and hugged strangers. Hope, real hope, was alive again. The Veltari High Command was not celebrating. They stared at the reports in disbelief. How had these primitives built faster than light ships? How had they destroyed 60 warships with only 12 vessels? What kind of species was this? Admiral Zethkar, who had started the war with such confidence, found himself unable to sleep. He reviewed the battle footage over and over. The human ships were crude and ugly. They should have been easy targets. But the humans flew them like they were extensions of their own bodies. They took insane risks. They sacrificed themselves to protect their comrades. They fought like beings with nothing to lose. He ordered more ships to the front lines. He demanded better weapons. He told his commanders to crush the humans at any cost. But deep in his hearts, a tiny voice whispered, "What if we cannot win?" On Earth, the war effort intensified. Factories ran day and night. Scientists worked without rest. Every resource was devoted to building ships, training soldiers, and developing new weapons. The human economy, once based on comfort and entertainment, transformed into a machine of war. Colonel Patricia Dunn became the most feared human commander in the galaxy. She was 41 years old, a former intelligence officer who had spent years studying enemy tactics. Now she applied that knowledge to the VELT. Dunn was patient. She would wait for weeks in ambush positions, hiding her ships in asteroid fields or behind moons, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Her soldiers called her the patient death, because by the time the enemy knew she was there, it was already too late. She developed new tactics that drove the Veltari crazy. She attacked their supply lines instead of their fleets. She destroyed fuel stations and food convoys. She hit soft targets and avoided strong ones. The Veltari had more ships, but Dunn made sure those ships were always hungry and tired. "You do not beat an enemy by fighting them head-on," she told her officers. "You beat them by making them fight on your terms. You make them chase shadows. You make them fear every asteroid and every moon. You make them so tired and scared that they start making mistakes. And then you kill them." The Veltari soldiers began to experience something new: fear. They had conquered dozens of species, and none had ever made them afraid. But humans were different. Humans appeared from nowhere and vanished into darkness. Humans smiled before they died. Humans never ever stopped fighting. Veltari officers started refusing assignments to human-contested sectors. Soldiers deserted rather than face human forces. The mighty empire that had ruled for 10,000 years was learning what it meant to be hunted. 3 years into the war, Earth liberated New Santiago. The colony that Amy Flores had died defending was free again. Human soldiers walked through the tunnels where she had made her last stand. They found the place where she had fallen, marked only by scorch marks on the walls and a small pile of stones placed by colonists, who had secretly honored her memory. The commanding officer, a young woman named Rachel Burke, stood in that tunnel and wept. She had never met Amy Flores, but she knew what Flores had sacrificed. Every human did. "We are here," Burke said to the empty tunnel, to the ghost of a woman who had refused to surrender. "We came back. You held the line, and we came back. Rest now. We will finish what you started." Back on Earth, Kevin Shaw worked himself to death. The physicist who had made faster than light travel possible collapsed in his lab one morning and never woke up. His heart simply gave out after years of too little sleep and too much stress. He was buried with full military honors. Lisa Morton, now Secretary General of the Earth Coalition, spoke at his funeral. "Kevin Shaw saved humanity," she said. "Without him, we would still be trapped in our solar system, waiting for Velfari to destroy us. He gave us the stars. He gave us a chance. We will not waste it." The fleet grew larger. The tactics grew more refined. The humans pushed forward, system by system, world by world. The Velfari retreated, unable to understand how they were losing to a species they had dismissed as primitive and weak. Admiral Zethkar watched the reports pile up on his desk. Defeat after defeat. Loss after loss. His empire was crumbling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. One night, alone in his quarters, he picked up his ceremonial blade. It was an ancient weapon, passed down through generations of his family. He looked at his reflection in the polished metal and saw a broken old man staring back. The official report said natural causes. Everyone knew the truth. The admiral who had started the war with such arrogance had taken his own life rather than face the consequences of his failure. Humanity did not celebrate his death. They were too busy planning the final assault. The war was almost over. It was time to end it. 5 years after the first shot was fired, the human fleet arrived at the Velfari homeworld. Admiral Daniel Price stood on the bridge of the flagship, Eternal Dawn, and stared at the planet below. It was beautiful in a cold way, all silver oceans and white clouds. Billions of Velfari lived down there. Civilians, families, children who had never asked for this war. Price was not the same man who had received that first message on his little research vessel. 5 years of war had changed him. He had watched friends die. He had ordered attacks that killed thousands. He had done terrible things in the name of survival. The weight of it all pressed down on his shoulders like a mountain of stone. But he had not come here for revenge. He had come here to end it. "Open a channel," he said. "Broadcast on all frequencies." His communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Price took a breath. "This is Admiral Daniel Price of the Earth Coalition. I am speaking to the Velfari High Council. 5 years ago, you sent us a message. You told us to surrender or die. We refused. Now I am here, above your homeworld, with 500 warships. I am offering you the same choice you offered us." He paused. The bridge was silent. "Surrender unconditionally. Disband your military. Release all conquered species. Accept responsibility for your crimes. Or we will do to your world what you did to Chicago and Hope's Landing and 100 other places. We will burn it to ash and salt the ground so nothing grows again. You have 1 hour to respond." He cut the transmission. Colonel Patricia Dunn stood beside him. She looked tired. They all looked tired. 5 years of war had drained everyone. "Do you think they will surrender?" she asked. Price shook his head. "I do not know. I hope so. I am tired of killing." Dunn nodded slowly. "We all are. But if they refuse, then we finish it," Price said. "We did not start this war. We will not apologize for ending it." The hour passed slowly. Price watched the planet rotate below, all those millions of lives hanging in the balance. He thought about Earth. He thought about his wife, who had died in the first year of the war when a Velfari raid hit their neighborhood. He thought about his son, who was 18 now and serving on one of the ships in his fleet. He thought about all the people who had died so humanity could reach this moment. Amy Flores, Kevin Shaw, the millions who had fallen on Earth and Mars and a dozen other worlds. They were all watching somehow. They were all waiting to see if their sacrifices had meant something. 45 minutes passed. 50. 50-5. At 59 minutes. A transmission came through. The face of Veltri appeared on the main screen. He was old, older than any Price had seen before. His skin was almost white, and his eyes were dull with defeat. "I am High Counselor Vethmer," he said. His voice was hollow. "I speak for what remains of the Veltri High Council. We accept your terms. We surrender." Price felt something loosen in his chest. Relief, exhaustion, a strange, empty feeling that he did not have a name for. "Your surrender is accepted," he said. "Stand down all military forces. Prepare to receive occupation troops. Anyone who resists will be dealt with harshly. Anyone who cooperates will be treated fairly. This war is over." He ended the transmission and sat down heavily in his chair. Around him, his bridge crew stared in stunned silence. Then, slowly, someone started to cry. Others joined in. Some laughed. Some simply sat in numb disbelief, thought it was over. It was finally over. The next few months were difficult. Occupation troops landed on Veltri worlds. War criminals were arrested and tried. The conquered species the Veltri had enslaved were freed, some after centuries of bondage. The galaxy watched in amazement as humanity, the young species that everyone had dismissed as primitive, dismantled an empire that had stood for 10,000 years. Price walked through the ruins of the Veltri capital one afternoon. Beside him was Lisa Morton, now old and gray, but still standing straight. She had guided humanity through the darkest years of its history. Without her steady hand, they might have given up a dozen times. Was it worth it? She asked, looking at the shattered buildings and empty streets. Price thought about the question for a long time. He thought about the billions dead on both sides. He thought about the world scarred by war. He thought about the people he had loved who were gone forever. He thought about his wife's smile and his son's first steps and all the moments he had missed, because he was fighting in the stars. "They gave us no choice," he said finally. "We did not start this. We just finished it. Would I undo it if I could? Would I let them enslave us to save all those lives? I do not know. Maybe, but that was never the choice. The choice was fight or surrender. We chose to fight." Morton nodded slowly. "And now? What do we do now?" Price looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, his fleet was patrolling, keeping watch. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was discussing what to do about humanity. Somewhere out there, 1,000 species were looking at humans with new eyes. "Now we build," he said. "We rebuild Earth. We help the species the Veltri enslaved. We show the galaxy that we are not monsters. We prove that we can be good neighbors, good allies. We earned our place among the stars with blood. Now, we have to earn it with peace." A year after the surrender, the Galactic Council passed a new law. It was inscribed in 1,000 languages on 1,000 worlds. It was taught in schools and printed in history books. It was the most important law in galactic history. It said, "Let no species threaten Earth. Let no empire provoke humanity. For they do not surrender, they do not forget, and they do not forgive. They are the sleeping giant, and woe unto any who wake them." Some species read that law and felt fear. Others felt admiration. A few felt both. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. Cities were rebuilt. Children went back to school. People fell in love and had babies and grew old. The war became history, then legend, then something taught in classes and remembered on holidays. But humanity never forgot. They built monuments to the fallen. They named ships after heroes like Amy Flores and Kevin Shaw. They told stories about the war to their children and their grandchildren. Stories about courage and sacrifice and the terrible price of freedom. And sometimes, late at night, old veterans would gather and raise their glasses to those who had not come home. They would remember friends and comrades and lovers lost in the darkness between stars. They would remember the fear and the pain and the endless, exhausting weight of war. And they would remember something else too. They would remember that when the galaxy came to destroy them, humanity had stood up and fought back. They would remember that humans had looked into the void and refused to blink. They would remember that their species, for all its flaws and failures, could be magnificent when it mattered most. The sleeping giant had awakened. It had fought its war and won its peace. Now it rested again, watching the stars with ancient, knowing eyes. But it was never really sleeping. It was waiting. It was waiting. Just in case. Because humanity never forgot. And humanity never forgave.